挽回
Swazdola, you sexy monster. How the hell are ya? If you clicked on this video, you presumably watched my previous How to Not Be a Shitty Nokko video and have a firm grasp on how he works now, and wish to take him to the next level? Well, you have come to the right place. Since this is the first video of my new series How to Bankai with a Warframe, allow me to briefly clarify what you are in for. As you know, I value teaching you how to master things fundamentally so you can play freely and explore your own styles instead of telling you to copy a build without understanding what the hell is even going on. My How to Not Be a Shitty Warframe series is meant to introduce you to any given Warframe and help you decide whether or not the Warframe is worth it for you. My builds there are always kept accessible from novice to intermediate channel. This advanced series will retain the same philosophy. We will keep it simple but explore aspects of min-maxing without going all the way but far enough. This is because I want you to keep the freedom of developing your own flavor. Now with that said, let's jump into it. Here is my Nokko setup. It will cost you 1 forma. Arcane Crepuscular gives you +3 final critical damage when invisible. In Nokko's reroute form, you are invisible for some reason, so this arcane will work. The main reason you want this is so you get way more disgusting damage from Spore Spring. To use it, you must cast Spore Spring and immediately jump into reroute so that every bounce from there on is buffed. You can do this another way too, but we shall explore that in a moment. Arcane Molt Augmented should be pretty clear. You gain permanent ability strength for each kill, which is great for a Nokko since he is good at killing masses of enemies. I will note at this point that it is not at all necessary to have this much ability strength to be a good mushroom man. So feel free to trade off strength for something else you prefer. The next key ingredient here is Archon Continuity. This mod adds corrosive status to any toxin statuses. Nokko's 4th ability Spore Spring dishes out tons of the toxin, so with this mod you will also get corrosion. So why does this matter? Because corrosion strips armor up to 80%. But what about the remaining 20%? Well, that's where these sexy bastards come into play. Archon Shards. Specifically the green ones. The stat I selected here reads, increase maximum stacks of corrosion status by 2. Corrosive status effects naturally cap out at 10 stacks, resulting in 80% armor strip. So if you increase the maximum possible stacks to 14, you will strip 100% armor, leaving enemies with nothing to protect them against your insane damage output. You need 2 regular green shards to achieve this. 1 Tau Forged will not be enough and thus be a waste. While on the topic of Archon Shards, I also added 2 Tau Forged yellow shards for casting speed. This is not essential but does refine Nokko gameplay quite a bit and feels great to use. Of course you could just add natural talent instead, but that is totally up to you and your flavor. The 5th shard slot is optional, so feel free to do whatever you want there. Let's talk loadout. With Nokko, getting enemies clustered is the ideal situation to deal incredible damage very fast. Sure, you could do that with Korra's Ensnare Subsume ability, but I do not believe you are the type to eat the sardine pineapple pizza like some kind of freak. Instead, you can use the secondary Sai Hotid. The secondary kunai has an alt fire that discharges a blob that will ensnare up to 8 enemies in a 15-meter radius. Obviously this is what you want this weapon for. But here is the trick, 8 enemies per snare is not really a whole bunch. But you can increase this by adding a ton of multi-shot. With this exact build you should be able to easily capture 20 to 30 enemies at a time. Then throw your Spore Spring on the group and watch them disappear. As for the rest of the build, this is optional and you can do what you like. But here is how I did it for maximum convenience. Fire rate should be self-explanatory. Heat damage as well. But the trick here I am exploiting is this, punch through combined with corrosion. Why? Well, keep in mind, that with 2 green shards on our Nokko, we will be stripping all armor instead of just 80%. This also applies to your weapons. So my Sai-Ho-Teed can strip armor on its own if I need to. The play is this: cast your wand to stun enemies and give them viral so they take way more damage to begin with, then fire your ult to ensnare them all into a group near the stink brain mushroom. Then you shoot them a little with the secondary. This is where punch through pays off because you will hit all the enemies in the cluster, so all of them will lose a bunch of armor before you even do anything. Now toss your basketball of death at them and then jump right into reroute. Before you can say, wow, this is the best Cephalon in the game, everything will be dead. I will point out that you will be at enemy levels well into the thousands before you actually need to play this at its full potential. So don't sweat it too much. Let's have a look at my melee of choice, which might surprise you. The Toolkit. Okay, so let's break this down. With our Nokko here, we can already crowd control and massively debuff large groups. We do not need to worry about farming with nucores or other shenanigans. All we need is a melee that will hit hard. Enter the Toolkit. Its unique trait is this: every time you increase your combo counter, you deal heat damage. Think about that for a second. You don't need mods for elemental damage at all really, because we already have everything we need. But, for shits and giggles, let's push it to absurdity anyway. I'm using relentless combination to make sure I get them combos fast and thus proc fire quickly. Trust me, this works very well. Weeping wounds so that I build all my statuses faster too. And the final piece to the puzzle is pure electrical damage to pair it with melee influence. Now I will admit I only did this to be a bit of an asshole to the enemies. Melee influence has a chance to shock all enemies in an 18-meter radius. Not only does this spread some damage, but mainly it crowd controls a game. Nokko greatly benefits from a few seconds of downtime to recover, but more to that in a second. Since electricity spreads, and apparently so does the heat from the Toolkit's passive, this really goes well with Nokko's overall chaotic play style. The rest of this build is optional. Personally, I leaned into more criticals, but you have a lot of room to play with here. Your focus school doesn't matter, by the way. Same goes for your primary. You can use whatever you like the most and tweak your Warframe build accordingly. I use Xeneric as a failsafe. The last piece of the puzzle to get extra disgusting is the choice of companion. My choice is the Hero's Kubro. Now mark my words, this strategy is only for those who want a special place in Tenno Hell, and relish the idea that the enemy refers to you as a massive cunt. Which is exactly why I did it too. The Hero's Kubro will make you invisible when danger is near. Thanks to the Petri works over time, this now works extremely reliable. This isn't for survivability. Nokko does not need it. But for the convenience of triggering Arcane Crepuscular passively instead of using reroute. Of course you could also use Shade, that's up to you. If you'd use invisibility companions, however, you can definitely subsume something you like onto reroute. This is Nokko's only borderline useless ability. For the subsume suggestion, you can use the usual shit like Roar, Eclipse, or Breach Surge, but I will note that Breach Surge fits the most to Nokko's chaotic play style. You could also try something a little more colorful like Helminth Empower or Evade from Sight. By no means do you need a subsumed ability though. Back to the companions. The build you use here is not really relevant at this point with the power we already have achieved. You could use the Mecha Mod set to spread status damages even more, but it's not like you need to. When it comes to pet companions, my general rule of thumb for their damage types is to use whatever elements the rest of my kit is missing. So my Heroes deals radiation, gas and magnetic. So more crowd control and way more assistance for condition overload. Another crazy viable option would be the Nautilus Sentinel with a cold build on him. Absolutely disgusting for a Nokko. Now you know how to go god mode with Nokko. Only one last thing to mention, which is how does he stay alive with so little health? I already explained his passive ability in the How to Not Be a Shit Nokko video, but what I did not mention specifically is that every time you come back to your mushroom after triggering the passive Vital Decay, you will gain 6, 11, or 16 seconds of invulnerability, which length is random but each is massive. Plenty of time for you to recast. bright bonnet, reposition, or do whatever you want in that time, but most importantly, you will always come back with full shields. Which means your shield gate is always restarted. Which also means that as long as you have a mushroom somewhere, you effectively cannot actually die. I realize that it might feel funny to get semi-down frequently, but once you get used to it you will see that health or even armor mods are completely obsolete. There you go. Now you can go out there and be a real Jedi. If this helped you a little, go ahead and subscribe because I have more in store for you Tenos. Make me proud. Now fuck off.